And just like a soldier, I keep on moving forward, always getting closer, I'm marching till it's over. And just like a soldier, I keep on moving forward.
Hello and welcome back to MangaMuse, guys. This is the first part of What If Naruto Enters Bluelock. Make sure to like, share, subscribe and also press the bell icon so that you never miss a great update. Also make sure to check out the wonderful author SpellRGN on FANFICTIONnet. Well, let's continue with the story now.
To become the best striker in the world is not merely to master the game, it is to master yourself. To find the balance between ego and teamwork, to turn selfishness into artistry, to stand above all others and say with absolute certainty, I am the greatest. In the heart of Tokyo's most affluent district, a teenage boy stands on a private football pitch. The sun sets behind him, casting a golden glow on his spiky blonde hair and blue eyes that glimmer with an intensity far beyond his years. His name is Uzumaki Naruto, heir to the Uzumaki business empire and a boy who, despite his privileged upbringing, feels the weight of the world pressing down on his shoulders. Naruto juggles the ball with effortless precision, each touch a rhythmic counterpoint to his thoughts. The pitch is immaculate, the kind of field most players could only dream of training on. But to Naruto, it feels empty. Soulless. There are no cheers, no opponents, no stakes. It's a stark reminder of the life he's lived, a life where everything is handed to him but nothing feels earned. All my life, Naruto mutters under his breath, catching the ball with the side of his foot, I was told I was meant to be the best. The heir. The genius. The kid who could do it all. He stares at the goal in front of him. The white frame looms in the distance, pristine and untouched. But what does being the best even mean? Naruto thinks back to the countless hours spent under the tutelage of the finest coaches money could buy. Drills, tactics, fitness regimens, they had been drilled into him from the moment he showed the slightest interest in football. But no matter how hard he trained, no matter how many goals he scored in youth leagues, something always felt missing. His parents, Minato and Kushina, praised his efforts but rarely had the time to watch his matches. His peers envied his talent but resented his privileged background. Even his victories felt hollow, as if they were the expected outcome rather than a hard-fought achievement. He places the ball on the grass and takes a step back, preparing to shoot. In his mind, he hears the voices of his critics, his supporters, and even his own doubts swirling together in a chaotic symphony. You'll never know what it's like to truly struggle. He's good, but he's not great. Why does he even bother? He'll inherit his parents' empire anyway. Naruto grits his teeth, he silences the noise with a single thought. I'm not doing this for anyone else. I'm doing this for me. Naruto takes off, his body a blur of motion as he drives toward the ball. His steps are quick, deliberate, his form textbook perfect. As he strikes, the impact reverberates through his body. The ball rockets forward, slicing through the air with precision. It slams into the top corner of the net, the perfect strike. But Naruto doesn't celebrate. He doesn't feel elation or satisfaction. Instead, he stares at the ball lying in the back of the net, as if searching for something that isn't there. Is this it? He whispers. Is this what it feels like to be the best? As he looks off into the distance. Naruto's moment of introspection is interrupted by the arrival of a figure from the estate staff. It's one of the housekeepers, carrying a crisp white envelope with an embossed seal. Master Naruto, she says with a polite bow, this came for you. Naruto takes the letter, his curiosity piqued. As he opens it, the contents make his heart skip a beat. Dear Naruto Uzumaki, you are invited to participate in the youth trials for VERYYYY Football Academy. This is an exclusive opportunity to compete among the finest players in the world. The trials will take place on. Naruto doesn't read the rest. His mind is already racing. VERYYYY. The pinnacle of football academies. The gateway to a professional career. And more importantly, a place where he could finally prove himself on a stage that mattered. As the sun dips below the horizon, Naruto clutches the letter tightly. This was it, the chance he'd been waiting for. But along with the excitement came a gnawing fear. What if he wasn't good enough? What if he failed? No, Naruto says aloud, shaking his head. I'm not going there to fail, I'm going there to win. For the first time, a flicker of true determination ignites in Naruto's eyes. The goal ahead of him is no longer just a net on an empty pitch, it's the dream of becoming the greatest striker in the world. To get there, he knows he must embrace the ego that fuels every true striker. He must become an egoist. I'll show them all, he says, his voice firm. I'll prove I'm not just the heir to some company. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, and I'll be the best striker in the world. As the stars begin to dot the night sky, Naruto sets the ball down once more. This time, when he strikes, it feels different. Not just a shot, but a declaration. A promise to himself and to the world. The Uzumaki family estate was a symbol of wealth and influence, sprawling over several acres in the heart of Tokyo's most affluent district. The mansion itself was an architectural marvel, a blend of traditional Japanese design and modern luxury. Large glass windows reflected the golden glow of the sunset, and meticulously maintained gardens surrounded the property, complete with koi ponds, cherry blossom trees, and a private football pitch. Inside, the air was as pristine as the marble floors. The scent of fresh flowers, carefully arranged by the house staff, lingered faintly. It was a home of perfection, but to Naruto, it sometimes felt less like a home and more like a museum, a place that demanded silence and excellence. Naruto sat at the dining table, the crisp letter from Real Academy clutched in his hand. He was waiting for his parents to return, unsure of how to tell them about the opportunity. Kushina Uzumaki, his mother, was the first to walk in. Her presence immediately filled the room with warmth and energy, a stark contrast to the cool, sterile environment of the estate. Kushina was a striking woman with long, vibrant red hair that seemed to glow under the soft lighting. Her sharp eyes softened as she spotted Naruto, and her expression shifted into a smile that could disarm anyone. "Hey, sweetheart," she said, kicking off her heels as she approached. "You look like you've got something on your mind." Naruto hesitated, holding up the letter. "This came for me today." Kushina's eyes scanned the letter, and her brows lifted in surprise. "Real Academy? The one in Spain?" Naruto nodded, unsure of how she'd react. His mother had always been supportive of his football dreams, but she was also fiercely protective. Her business acumen made her sharp and decisive, but as a mother, she was softer, though no less formidable. Kushina leaned on the table, her crimson hair cascading over her shoulder. "Naruto, this is huge. Real doesn't just invite anyone. You realize how big of a deal this is, right?" "Yeah, I know," Naruto said, his voice quieter than usual. "But what if I'm not good enough?" Kushina straightened, her expression hardening into something resolute. "Uzumaki Naruto, you listen to me." She crouched down, meeting his eye level. "You've got talent, and you've got guts. But more than that, you've got heart. You've always been the kind of kid who keeps going, no matter what anyone says. That's what makes you special. So, no more doubting yourself, got it?" Naruto felt a lump in his throat but nodded. "Got it." Kushina smiled again, ruffling his hair. "Good. Now, let's tell your dad. He'll be over the moon." Minato arrived home late that evening, as he often did, but not without making time for his family. His sharp suit was immaculate, his blonde hair neatly styled, and his calm demeanor exuded confidence. Despite being the CEO of the Uzumaki Corporation, Minato always tried to maintain a sense of humility and approachability. Naruto found him in the study, leafing through documents. The room was filled with the smell of leather and old books, a quiet retreat from the chaos of the outside world. "Dad," Naruto said, standing in the doorway, "do you have a minute?" Minato looked up and immediately smiled, setting his work aside. "Of course, Naruto. What's on your mind?" Naruto stepped forward, holding the letter. He handed it to his father, watching as Minato's eyes scanned the page. There was a flicker of pride in Minato's expression, followed by a contemplative look. "Real Academy," Minato said softly. "This is incredible, Naruto. An opportunity like this doesn't come often." Mom said the same thing, Naruto admitted. But I'm not sure if I'm ready. Minato leaned back in his chair, his sharp blue eyes studying his son. Naruto, do you know what I think when I look at you? Naruto tilted his head, confused. What? I see someone who refuses to give up, Minato said with a small smile. You're not just my son, you're someone I admire. You have a fire in you, Naruto. That fire will carry you further than talent or training ever could. But, he added, his tone serious, you'll need to work harder than ever. Real isn't just about talent, they test your spirit, your discipline, and your ability to adapt. Naruto nodded, determination flickering in his eyes. I'll do whatever it takes. That's my boy, Minato said, standing and placing a hand on Naruto's shoulder. Your mother and I will support you every step of the way. But this is your journey, Naruto, make it count. Over the next few weeks, Naruto threw himself into training with an intensity that surprised even him. His family's wealth gave him access to the best facilities and trainers, but Naruto made it clear he didn't want special treatment. Every morning began with a grueling regimen. Endurance training, long-distance runs to improve his stamina. Strength training, weighted drills to build explosive power. Tactical sessions, watching recordings of professional matches to study positioning and movement. Evenings were dedicated to skill work, dribbling, passing, and shooting. Naruto spent hours on the pitch, pushing himself to perfect every aspect of his game. His parents occasionally watched from the sidelines, offering quiet encouragement. One evening, as Naruto sat on the patio overlooking the pitch, Kushina joined him with 2 mugs of hot tea. She handed him one, sitting beside him. You know, Kushina began, when I was your age, I had dreams too. Naruto blinked. You did? Kushina laughed softly. Of course. I wanted to become a writer. I even wrote a few short stories when I had time between school and helping out with the family business. But life had other plans. Do you regret it? Naruto asked. Sometimes, Kushina admitted. But I learned something important along the way. No matter what you choose to do, Naruto, make sure it's something that sets your soul on fire. Something you can look back on and say, I gave it everything I had. That's what matters. Naruto stared into his tea, her words resonating deeply. I think football is that for me, Mom. Then go for it, Kushina said, placing a hand on his. And don't let anyone tell you that you can't do it. The day before his departure for the trials, Naruto stood on the pitch with his father. Minato held a stopwatch, timing Naruto as he sprinted across the field. Faster, Naruto. Minato called. You're almost there. Naruto pushed himself harder, his muscles screaming in protest. When he crossed the line, he collapsed to the ground, panting. Minato approached, kneeling beside him. You've done well. But remember, the competition will be fierce. Stay focused, trust your instincts, and don't forget what makes you unique. Naruto looked up at his father, a grin spreading across his face despite his exhaustion. Thanks, Dad. I won't let you down. The next morning, Naruto stood at the airport with his parents. Kushina hugged him tightly, whispering, You've got this, Naruto. Go show them who you are. Minato placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder, his expression proud but composed. Remember, son, it's not about where you start, it's about where you finish. As Naruto boarded the plane to Spain, his heart raced with anticipation. He was leaving behind the comfort of home and stepping into the unknown. But he knew one thing for certain, he was ready to give it his all. The warm Spanish sun greeted Naruto as he stepped off the plane at Madrid Barajas Airport. The air was crisp and carried a faint hint of sea salt, a stark contrast to the familiar, humid atmosphere of Tokyo. This was it, Spain, the heartland of football. Naruto could feel his pulse quicken as he clutched his travel bag, its strap slung over his shoulder. For the first time in his life, he wasn't just representing himself but an entire dream, one that he was determined to seize. Naruto scanned the bustling terminal, his eyes wide with a mix of awe and determination. People moved briskly, chattering in Spanish and other languages he couldn't quite place. The airport buzzed with life, yet Naruto felt a strange stillness within himself, a quiet resolve that anchored him amidst the chaos. Naruto's thoughts were interrupted by a sharp, professional voice. "Naruto Uzumaki?" He turned to see a man in a crisp suit holding a placard with his name. The man's demeanor was all business, stern and efficient. "That's me," Naruto said, stepping forward. "I'm Mr. Escudero, your liaison for Real Academy." "Welcome to Spain," the man said, extending a hand. His handshake was firm, almost testing. "Follow me. The Academy's shuttle is waiting." Naruto nodded and followed Escudero through the terminal and out into the vibrant cityscape of Madrid. The ride to the Academy was both awe-inspiring and nerve-wracking. Towering cathedrals, bustling plazas, and vibrant street markets zipped past the window, but Naruto's thoughts were focused inward. He clutched the letter of invitation in his pocket like a lifeline. The shuttle pulled into a sprawling complex just outside the city, a fortress of footballing excellence. Real Academy was a state-of-the-art facility surrounded by lush green pitches that stretched as far as the eye could see. Towering floodlights loomed overhead, casting long shadows over the pristine grass. The sound of whistles, shouted instructions, and the dull thud of balls being struck echoed through the air. Naruto stepped out of the shuttle, his heart pounding. This was it. The place where dreams were made or broken. "You'll be staying in the players' dormitories for the duration of the trials," Escudero explained as he led Naruto through the grounds. "Your schedule will be rigorous. Each day will begin with physical conditioning, followed by tactical drills, scrimmages, and evaluations. The coaches will be watching everything." Naruto swallowed hard but nodded. "Understood." Escudero paused and looked down at Naruto, his expression softening slightly. "One more thing. Don't let the reputation of this place intimidate you. Everyone here started where you are now, nervous, unsure. The question is, will you let that stop you?" Naruto's fists clenched at his sides. "No way. I didn't come all this way to back down." Escudero's lips twitched into the faintest hint of a smile. "Good, follow me." Naruto was shown to his dormitory, a modest but comfortable room outfitted with a single bed, a desk, and a locker. His belongings barely filled the space, but he didn't mind. He wasn't here for luxury. He was here to prove himself. After unpacking, Naruto headed to the cafeteria, where the other trialists were gathering. The room was abuzz with energy, filled with players from around the world. Naruto scanned the crowd, his eyes narrowing as he sized up the competition. Some were laughing and joking, others sitting quietly with headphones on, but all of them exuded an air of confidence. Naruto grabbed a tray of food and found an empty table, his nerves finally catching up to him. As he picked at his meal, he overheard snippets of conversations. "Did you see that guy from Argentina? He's already playing in a youth league back home." "Yeah, but the kid from Germany is insane, he scored 30 goals last season." "What about Itoshir Sae? I heard he's here, too." Naruto's ears perked up at the mention of Sae. He had heard of Japan's prodigy before everyone had. Sae was a legend in the making, already made his professional debut in Europe at just 14. The thought of facing someone like that sent a shiver down Naruto's spine, but it also ignited a spark of determination. The next morning, the trialists were herded onto one of the academy's main pitches. Rows of coaches stood with clipboards, their sharp eyes scanning the young hopefuls. The first trial was simple, a series of drills designed to assess the players' basic skills: dribbling, passing, shooting, and ball control. Naruto's group was called first. He stepped onto the field, feeling the weight of dozens of eyes on him. The drill was straightforward: weave through a series of cones, then take a shot on goal. Naruto took a deep breath as the whistle blew. He exploded into motion, his feet darting between the cones with precision. When he reached the end, he struck the ball cleanly, sending it soaring into the top corner of the net. The coaches made notes on their clipboards, their expressions unreadable. "Not bad," one of them murmured, loud enough for Naruto to hear. As the trial progressed, Naruto found himself drawn to one particular group of players. Among them was Itoshir Sae, his every move a masterclass in efficiency and elegance. While others stumbled or hesitated, Sae glided through the drills with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. Naruto couldn't take his eyes off him. Sae wasn't just good, he was leagues ahead of anyone else on the pitch. Watching him, Naruto felt the gap between them like a chasm. "You staring at him isn't going to make you better," a voice said from beside him. Naruto turned to see a boy with sharp, dark eyes and messy brown hair. He recognized him from the cafeteria. Kaya Riku. "He's incredible," Naruto admitted, his voice low. "Yeah, but so what?" Kaya Riku said, shrugging. "You think he wasn't staring at someone better than him when he started? Everyone's chasing someone. The question is, who's chasing you?" Naruto blinked, taken aback by the question. Before he could respond, the coaches called the next group, and Kaya Riku jogged off with a wave. By the end of the first day, Naruto was exhausted but exhilarated. The drills had tested every ounce of his skill and stamina, but he had held his own. As he collapsed onto his bed that night, his thoughts were consumed by the challenges ahead. This wasn't just about making it into the academy. It was about proving to himself and to everyone else that he belonged. And though the shadow of players like Sae loomed large, Naruto felt something stir deep within him. As the moonlight filtered through the window, Naruto sat up, staring at his hands. The doubts that had plagued him before were still there, but they were quieter now, drowned out by a single, burning thought. "I won't lose. Not here. Not to him. Not to anyone." Naruto clenched his fists, the fire in his chest rekindling. Tomorrow was another day, a chance to fight, to prove, and to claim his place among the best. The journey had only just begun. The sun hung high over the fields of Real Academy, its golden rays glinting off the perfectly manicured grass. It had been a month since Naruto, 14 years old and brimming with ambition, had arrived at the elite training grounds in Spain. This wasn't just any football academy, it was a crucible, a place designed to transform raw talent into the best players in the world. But here, among prodigies from every corner of the globe, Naruto quickly realized that sheer grit and determination weren't always enough. Every day was a battle not just against others, but against himself. The early mornings were rough, filled with intense conditioning drills, sprints, weight training, and agility exercises designed to push players beyond their limits. Afternoons were spent on technique, with endless repetitions of passing, dribbling, and shooting. Even the evenings, reserved for tactical sessions, felt like a mental war as the coaches dissected matches and formations with unforgiving precision. Despite the punishing schedule, Naruto hadn't faltered, he couldn't afford to. Every mistake was magnified in an environment where even the smallest slip-up could make the difference between staying or being sent home. And every success, no matter how small, was a step closer to proving he belonged. Every time Naruto stepped onto the pitch, his eyes were drawn to one figure, Itoshir Sae, at 15 years old and already leagues ahead of everyone else. Sae wasn't just a player, he was a force of nature. His movements were precise, his vision unparalleled, and his technique flawless. Watching Sae play was like witnessing a master painter at work, each pass and shot a brushstroke on the canvas of the pitch, a true master. For Naruto, Sae represented everything he wanted to become and everything he wasn't. It wasn't just the way Sae dominated the field, it was the way he carried himself, with an unshakable confidence that bordered on arrogance. Sae didn't just play to win. He played to remind everyone that they couldn't touch him. During one scrimmage, Sae's team dismantled Naruto's side with surgical precision. Every time Naruto thought he had an opening, Sae would appear, effortlessly intercepting the ball or threading a pass that split their defense wide open. By the time the match ended, the score was 6-0, and Naruto was left staring at the ground, his fists clenched in frustration. In the locker room after the match, Naruto sat on the bench, staring at the floor. Sweat dripped from his hair, his muscles ached, and his pride felt bruised beyond repair. The other players chatted and laughed, but Naruto couldn't join in. His mind was racing, replaying every mistake, every missed opportunity. "How the hell am I supposed to keep up with that?" he muttered under his breath. A voice broke through his thoughts. Still sulking, Uzumaki? Naruto looked up to see Kaya Riku, a wiry boy with sharp eyes and a perpetual smirk. Kaya was one of the more vocal players in the academy, never missing an opportunity to remind others of their shortcomings. Shut up, Kaya, Naruto snapped, his tone sharper than intended. Kaya shrugged, leaning against the lockers. I'm just saying, if you're already losing it after one bad game, maybe you're not cut out for this. Naruto stood, his glare like daggers. I'm not losing it, and I'm not giving up. Kaya smirked, clearly enjoying the reaction. Good. Because if you can't handle SAE now, you're in for a long, painful year. That evening, long after the other players had gone to their dorms, Naruto was still on the pitch. The floodlights bathed the field in a cold white glow as he worked through drill after drill. His legs screamed in protest, his lungs burned, but he refused to stop. You think you can stop me like this? Naruto froze at the voice, spinning around to see SAE himself standing at the edge of the pitch. The older boy's expression was unreadable, his arms crossed as he watched Naruto with the same detached curiosity he seemed to have for everything. What do you want, SAE? Naruto asked, his tone defensive. SAE stepped onto the field, his movements deliberate and measured. I want to know why you're still out here, you already lost today. What's the point of this? Naruto's fists clenched at his sides. Because I'm not giving up. I'm going to get better. I'm going to beat you. For a moment, SAE said nothing. Then, a faint smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. You're serious. DMN right, I'm serious, Naruto shot back. SAE tilted his head, his eyes narrowing slightly. Then you should know something, Naruto. Hard work isn't enough. Effort doesn't matter if you don't have the ability to back it up. Naruto's chest tightened, but he refused to back down. Then I'll make myself into someone who does. SAE's smirk faded, replaced by something colder. Good luck with that. He turned and walked away, leaving Naruto standing alone on the pitch, his resolve burning brighter than ever. The following week brought new trials and new frustrations. During a series of small-sided games, Naruto found himself paired against SAE again. Despite his best efforts, SAE outplayed him at every turn, reading his movements as if they were scripted. Naruto's teammates grew visibly frustrated as their attacks faltered, and the tension on the field there for everyone to see. DMN it, Uzumaki, one of them shouted after another turnover. What are you doing? Naruto's jaw tightened, the sting of the words cutting deep. He wanted to scream back, to tell them he was trying his hardest, but he knew it wouldn't change anything. By the end of the game, Naruto's team had lost again, and he felt the weight of failure pressing down on him. The dormitory was quiet, and the distant hum of floodlights still illuminating the empty pitches. Naruto sat on the edge of his bed, staring at his phone. His body ached from the relentless grind of training, but his mind felt heavier. He hadn't spoken to his parents since arriving at Real Academy. Part of him didn't want to. How could he face them when he wasn't even sure he belonged here? But tonight, the loneliness gnawed at him more than usual. After staring at his phone for several minutes, he finally tapped on the screen and selected his mother's contact number, FaceTiming her. The phone barely rang twice before Kushina's face appeared on the screen. Her vibrant red hair was slightly tousled, and her warm smile lit up the screen. Naruto. There's my boy, she greeted, her voice full of energy. It's about time you called. I was starting to think you forgot about us. Naruto chuckled softly, scratching the back of his head. Sorry, Mom. It's been busy. Busy, huh? Kushina tilted her head, studying him closely. You look tired, sweetheart. Are you sleeping enough? Yeah, of course, Naruto lied, trying to muster a confident grin. Training's just intense, that's all. But I'm doing fine. Kushina's eyes narrowed slightly, her motherly instincts kicking in. Naruto, are you really fine? The question hit harder than Naruto expected. He opened his mouth to respond but hesitated. The weight of the past month suddenly felt overwhelming, but he didn't want to burden her with it. "I'm fine, Mom," he said finally, his voice quieter. "It's just a lot to get used to. The level here is way higher than I thought." Kushina leaned closer to the screen, her sharp eyes softening. "Naruto, it's okay to admit if you're struggling. This isn't something you have to face alone." Naruto looked away, his grip tightening on the phone. I don't want to let anyone down. You and Dad worked so hard to get me here, I have to make it work." Kushina's expression shifted, a mix of pride and concern. "Naruto, listen to me. Your father and I are proud of you no matter what. Whether you're the best player at that academy or just figuring things out, it doesn't change how we feel about you." Naruto's chest tightened at her words, and he felt a lump forming in his throat. He quickly looked away, blinking back the sting of tears. Kushina softened her tone further. "You know, the holidays are coming up soon. Why don't you come home for a break? Take some time to rest, reset, and spend time with your family." Naruto hesitated. The thought of going home was tempting, but part of him felt like leaving, even temporarily, would mean admitting defeat. "I don't know, Mom. What if the coaches think I'm not committed?" Kushina chuckled lightly. "Naruto, even the best players in the world need a break sometimes. Besides, you don't want your old man to think you've forgotten how to eat his cooking, do you?" Naruto managed a small smile. "That's true, Dad's food is hard to beat." Kushina's smile widened. "Then it's settled. You'll come home for the holidays. I'll take care of everything, okay? Just promise me one thing." "What's that?" "Promise me you won't try to carry everything on your shoulders," Kushina said, her voice firm but loving. "We're here for you, Naruto. Always." Naruto nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. "I promise." Naruto adjusted the duffel bag slung over his shoulder, the blue and white of his Real Academy tracksuit catching the light of the bustling airport. After months of grueling training, the sight of the Tokyo skyline through the plane window had been a welcome relief. The chaos of the academy had been replaced by the familiar hum of Japan, and for the first time in a while, Naruto felt at home. As he made his way through the arrivals terminal, he spotted a figure walking ahead of him, equally clad in Real Academy gear was SAE. Naruto wasn't surprised to see SAE here. They were both from Japan, after all, and their flight had been packed with connections from Europe. SAE's presence, as always, exuded a quiet intensity that made people stop and stare. His sharp features and aura of unshakable confidence made him hard to miss. Naruto kept his distance, not wanting to start a conversation. But that didn't stop others from noticing them. A small group of reporters stood near the exit, cameras in hand and eyes scanning the crowd. As soon as they spotted SAE, they pounced. "Itoshire SAE," one of them called, rushing forward. "Can we get a quick interview?" SAE ignored them entirely, his face a mask of calm disinterest. He didn't break stride as the reporters peppered him with questions. "SAE, how has your training at Real Academy been? What do you think of the competition in Europe? Do you have any comments about representing Japan on the world stage?" The reporters scrambled to keep up with SAE as he reached the curb, standing silently as he waited for his car. His complete lack of acknowledgement seemed to fluster them, but they didn't stop trying. Naruto, watching the scene unfold, couldn't help but smirk. Typical SAE. Then, one of the reporters turned, their eyes landing on Naruto's tracksuit. Recognition flickered in their expression. "Wait, is that another Real Academy player?" one of them said, pointing. The rest of the group immediately shifted their focus to Naruto, their curiosity piqued. "Excuse me," one of them called, hurrying over. "Are you also training at Real Academy?" Naruto blinked, caught off guard by the sudden attention. Yeah. I just joined this year." The reporters exchanged glances, their intrigue growing. "We didn't know there was another Japanese player at Real. What's it like training there? How does it feel to be alongside someone like SAE?" Naruto hesitated. The spotlight wasn't something he was used to. "It's intense," he said carefully. The level there is no joke. Everyone's pushing themselves to be the best. And what's your name? Another reporter asked. We'd love to know more about you. Naruto paused for a moment, unsure if he should answer. Then, with a small nod, he straightened his posture and spoke clearly. Naruto Uzumaki. The reaction was immediate. The reporter's eyes widened, their murmurs quickly turning into hushed excitement. Uzumaki? As in the Uzumaki family? The business tycoons? Naruto's jaw tightened slightly. He had hoped to avoid this kind of attention. Yeah, he said reluctantly. That's my family. One of the reporters leaned forward, their voice brimming with curiosity. So, why football? With your family's connections, you could have followed a different path. Naruto met their gaze, his blue eyes steady. Because football is what I love. It's my dream, and I'm going to chase it no matter what. Before they could ask more questions, Naruto spotted his car pulling up to the curb. The sleek black sedan stopped just a few feet away, and the driver stepped out, giving him a respectful nod. Excuse me, Naruto said, turning back to the reporters. That's my ride. As he walked away, he glanced over at SAE one last time. SAE's car had just arrived as well, and for a brief moment, their eyes met. SAE's expression was unreadable, but Naruto couldn't help feeling that his rival had been watching the entire interaction. Naruto offered a small nod, more to himself than to SAE, before sliding into his car. The door closed with a soft click, and the city began to blur past the window as the car pulled away. Leaning back against the seat, Naruto let out a slow breath. The reporter's reaction to his name had left him uneasy. He didn't want to be known as the heir to the Uzumaki Empire. He wanted to be known for what he could do on the pitch. That's why I'm doing this, he reminded himself. Not for them. For me. His thoughts drifted back to SAE, standing stoically as the reporters hounded him. SAE's confidence was unshakable, his presence commanding even in silence. It was the kind of aura Naruto wanted to achieve not because of his name, but because of his skill. The car weaved through the streets of Tokyo, drawing closer to the Uzumaki estate. Naruto sat up straighter, his resolve hardening. The holidays might be a break, but they wouldn't be an excuse to slow down. He had too much to prove to himself, to SAE, and to anyone who thought he couldn't make it. As the car pulled into the long driveway of the Uzumaki estate, Naruto spotted his mother, Kushina, waiting at the door. Her arms were crossed, but her smile was warm. The sight brought a flicker of relief to Naruto's chest. Stepping out of the car, he slung his bag over his shoulder and made his way up the steps. Kushina didn't say a word at first, simply pulling him into a tight hug. Welcome home, Naruto, she said softly. Thanks, Mom, he replied, his voice quieter than usual. As he stepped inside, the familiar warmth of home wrapped around him. But even as he breathed it in, the fire in his chest burned brighter. The holidays were just a chance to regroup before he threw himself back into the fight. The dull thud of the ball meeting Naruto's foot echoed through the backyard training pitch of the Uzumaki estate. Naruto was drenched in sweat, his academy tracksuit clinging to him as he worked through his drills. Even during the holidays, he couldn't afford to let up. The competition at Real Academy was relentless, and if he wanted to rise to the top, he had to keep pushing. Naruto, his mother's voice rang out from the patio. Come inside. You need to get ready. Naruto paused, catching the ball under his foot. Ready for what? He called back. We're going to the Mikage party tonight. Kushina replied, her tone light but insistent. Hurry up. Naruto frowned. I don't have time for that. Besides, I'm covered in sweat. Kushina rolled her eyes as she approached him, hands on her peach. You're going, whether you like it or not. And if you don't want to change, that's fine. Your academy tracksuit will do, it'll show everyone how hard you're working. Naruto groaned, running a hand through his damp hair. Fine, but this better not take all night. As the car pulled up to the Mikage estate was a sprawling, luxurious property, rivaling the Uzumaki's own home in size and elegance. Chandeliers sparkled from inside the grand hall, and the hum of chatter and laughter spilled out into the cool evening air. Cars pulled up one after another, dropping off sharply dressed guests in designer suits and gowns. Naruto, however, stood out like a sore thumb in his Real Academy tracksuit. He tugged at the collar as he followed his mother into the house, feeling completely out of place. The party itself was as expected, adults mingling, sipping champagne, and talking business. Naruto quickly realized there was nothing here for him. He wandered away from the main crowd, finding himself leaning against a wall in one of the quieter corners of the hall. As Naruto stood idly, scanning the room, he noticed a boy about his age making his way through the crowd. His vibrant purple highlighted hair made him stand out, and his confident stride suggested he was used to this kind of environment. Ryo Mikage. Naruto knew of Ryo. The Mikage family was practically a household name in Japan, thanks to their massive business empire. The two had crossed paths before at similar events, but they had only talked a little. Ryo spotted Naruto and grinned, making his way over. Naruto Uzumaki, right? The football guy? Naruto blinked, surprised. Yeah, that's me, and you're Ryo Mikage. The guy who probably hates football. Ryo laughed, shoving his hands into his pockets. That's fair. I've never actually played before, too busy being dragged to these boring parties. Join the club, Naruto muttered, glancing around the room where the adults were deep in conversation about stocks, mergers, and other things he couldn't care less about. Ryo leaned against the wall beside him. So, how come you play? Football, I mean. I know you're at Real Academy, but why do you do it? Naruto hesitated. It wasn't a question he got asked often, and it wasn't something he usually talked about. But something about Ryo's curious tone made him pause and think. I play because, Naruto began, searching for the right words. Because of the thrill. The rush of the game, the ego of beating the best, and the feeling inside when I score. It's like nothing else. Every time I step onto the pitch, I know I'm getting closer to becoming the best in the world. And that's all I want. Ryo's eyes widened slightly, his expression a mix of surprise and admiration. That's intense. Naruto shrugged. It's who I am. Why? Are you thinking about trying it? Ryo chuckled, scratching the back of his head. Maybe one day, I don't know. Naruto smirked. Well, if you ever do, let me know. I'll show you a few things. As the conversation lulled, Naruto's eyes wandered across the room. He spotted a girl standing near the edge of the crowd, her short jet black hair making her easy to pick out. She wore a simple, elegant dress, her posture perfect as she sipped from a glass of water. Her gray eyes scanned the room with quiet detachment, as though she was observing the party from the outside. Who's that? Naruto asked, nodding in her direction. Ryo followed his gaze and chuckled. Her? That's Mikasa Ackerman. She goes to my school. She's intense, Naruto said, watching the way she carried herself with a calm, almost intimidating aura. Ryo grinned. Yeah, she's a bit cold, very serious. Doesn't talk much, but she's a good classmate. Keeps to herself most of the time. Naruto tilted his head. Why? Ryo raised an eyebrow. Why what? Why does she keep to herself? Ryo shrugged. Who knows? She's like a wall of ice. Nobody gets close to her. Why are you so curious? Naruto leaned back, crossing his arms. She's good looking. Ryo burst out laughing, drawing a few glances from nearby guests. Good looking? Dude, good luck with that. Naruto frowned. What's that supposed to mean? Mikasa doesn't date anyone, Ryo said, shaking his head. She's got this whole, I don't need anyone, vibe. Trust me, don't even try it. Naruto smirked, his competitive side kicking in. Well, watch and learn. Ryo groaned, covering his face. You're gonna embarrass yourself, Naruto. Naruto's grin widened. Maybe. But I don't lose, Ryo, remember that. As Naruto stood near the edge of the room, his eyes occasionally darting toward Mikasa Ackerman. She remained where she had been, a quiet observer in a sea of loud, bustling adults. Her composed demeanor, paired with her striking features, made her stand out even in a room filled with elegance and wealth. Naruto glanced at Ryo, who was leaning against the wall beside him, clearly amused by his friend's growing fascination. "So, you're actually going to try this, huh?" Ryo asked, smirking. Naruto adjusted the collar of his Real Academy tracksuit and shrugged. "Why not?" "Because she's ice cold, man," Ryo said, his grin widening. "She barely talks to people at school, let alone some random guy at a party." "You're wasting your time." Naruto smirked, his blue eyes glinting with determination. "You said she doesn't talk to some random guy. Good thing I'm not just some random guy." Ryo groaned, shaking his head. "All right. Let's see what you've got." Naruto took a deep breath and made his way across the room. He could feel the weight of Ryo's amused gaze on his back, but he ignored it. Confidence had always been his greatest weapon, whether on the pitch or off, and tonight was no different. As he neared Mikasa, she turned slightly, her sharp gray eyes catching his approach. Her expression didn't change, no curiosity, no irritation, just calm observation. It was as if she were waiting to see what he would do. "Hey," Naruto said, stopping a few feet away. He offered her a small, easygoing smile. "You look like you're having just as much fun as I am." Mikasa raised an eyebrow, her tone cool but polite. "And how much fun is that?" "None," Naruto said with a chuckle. "Parties like this aren't really my thing." Mikasa's gaze shifted slightly, her eyes briefly scanning his tracksuit before returning to his face. "You don't look like you belong here." Naruto grinned. "That makes two of us." For a moment, there was silence between them. Mikasa didn't seem inclined to continue the conversation, but she also didn't walk away. Naruto took it as a good sign. "So," Naruto said, leaning slightly against a nearby column, "you go to school with Ryo, right? What's that like?" Mikasa gave a small shrug. "It's fine. He's loud, but he's a good classmate." Naruto smirked. "Sounds about right. He's been running his mouth all night, telling me I don't have a chance talking to you." Mikasa's lips twitched, almost forming a smile. "Is that so?" "Yeah," Naruto said, nodding. "But I don't listen to guys like Ryo. He thinks just because you're quiet, you're not interested in talking to people." "I don't buy it." Mikasa tilted her head slightly, her gray eyes narrowing in faint curiosity. "And what makes you think you know me?" "I don't," Naruto admitted, his tone genuine. "But I'd like to." Mikasa studied him for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then, to Naruto's surprise, she spoke. "You're not like the others here." Naruto chuckled, gesturing to his tracksuit. "What gave it away?" Her lips twitched again, but she didn't smile. "You're confident." "That's one way to put it," Naruto said, his grin widening. "But seriously, why do you keep to yourself so much? You don't strike me as the shy type." Mikasa hesitated, glancing toward the crowd of adults. Her voice was quieter when she replied. "Because I don't like wasting time on meaningless conversations." Naruto raised an eyebrow. "And this? Is this meaningless?" Mikasa's gray eyes flicked back to him, and for a brief moment, he thought he saw the faintest glimmer of amusement. "That depends." "On what?" "On whether you have anything interesting to say." Naruto laughed, genuinely impressed. "Fair enough. Let's see how about this, I'll make a bet with you." Mikasa's eyebrow arched again. "A bet?" "Yeah," Naruto said, crossing his arms. "I bet I can make you smile before the night's over." Mikasa's expression didn't change, but there was a flicker of intrigue in her eyes. "What happens if you lose?" Naruto shrugged. "Then I'll leave you alone for the rest of the night." "And if you win?" Naruto's grin widened. Then you have to admit that talking to me wasn't a waste of time. Mikasa considered this for a moment, then gave a small nod. All right. You have until the end of the night. Deal, Naruto said, extending a hand. Mikasa didn't take it, but she gave him a subtle look that said, "You're bold, Naruto." And that was enough for him. As Naruto made his way back across the room, Ryo was waiting for him, arms crossed and a look of disbelief on his face. Well? Ryo asked. How'd it go? Naruto smirked, his confidence unshaken. I got her to make a bet with me. Ryo's jaw dropped. A bet? What kind of bet? I bet I could make her smile before the night's over, Naruto said casually. Ryo groaned, dragging a hand down his face. You're insane. Do you know how hard it is to get Mikasa to smile? You might as well have bet your life savings. Naruto shrugged. Maybe. But if I win, it'll be worth it. Ryo shook his head, his expression caught somewhere between exasperation and admiration. You're something else, Naruto. But don't come crying to me when she tears you apart. Naruto chuckled. Relax, Ryo. Ryo sidled up beside Naruto, a bemused grin on his face. So, what's the plan, Mr. Confident? You said you're going to make Mikasa smile, but she looks like she's about to ice over the entire room. Naruto smirked, his blue eyes gleaming with determination. I've got a few ideas. All right, Ryo said, crossing his arms. This should be good. Naruto approached Mikasa with his trademark confidence, his grin wide and easy. She noticed him immediately, her gray eyes flicking up to meet his. She didn't say anything, but the slight tilt of her head suggested curiosity. Hey, Mikasa, Naruto began. So, I was talking to Ryo, and I realized something. Mikasa raised an eyebrow. What? Naruto leaned in slightly, his grin widening. You're probably the only person here who hasn't told me how amazing I am. Mikasa's expression didn't change. Why would I? Naruto pretended to be offended, placing a hand over his chest. Because it's true. I'm at Real Academy, after all. That's got to earn me some praise. Mikasa's lips twitched, but she quickly suppressed it. So you're fishing for compliments now? Not fishing, Naruto corrected, holding up a finger. Just stating facts. Mikasa shook her head, but Naruto could see the faintest glimmer of amusement in her eyes. Not a smile yet, but I'm getting closer, he thought. Undeterred, Naruto tried a different approach. All right, forget the compliments. Let me tell you a story instead. Mikasa crossed her arms, her expression skeptical. A story? Yep, Naruto said, his tone confident. It's about the time I embarrassed myself. That seemed to catch Mikasa's attention. Go on. Naruto launched into the tale of his first scrimmage at Real Academy. He described in vivid detail how he had tried to stop Itoshira Sei, only to completely misjudge his movements and end up sliding face first into the dirt. His exaggerated gestures and self-deprecating humor painted a hilarious picture, drawing a few nearby listeners as well. Mikasa's expression softened slightly, her lips almost curving upward. But just as Naruto thought he had her, she simply nodded. Sounds like you recovered well. Naruto groaned internally. So close. As Naruto plotted his next move, a familiar voice rang out across the room. There he is. My star player. Naruto turned, his stomach sinking slightly as he saw his mother, Kushina, making a beeline toward him. Her vibrant red hair and fiery energy made her impossible to miss, and her voice carried loud enough for half the party to hear. Oh, no, Naruto muttered under his breath. Kushina reached him in seconds, placing her hands on her peach as she gave him a mock stern look. Naruto, you've been hiding over here all night. Why aren't you mingling? Mom, Naruto groaned, glancing at Mikasa out of the corner of his eye. I'm fine. I don't need to mingle. Nonsense. Kushina said, waving a hand dismissively. Do you know how many people here would love to meet you? You're my son, after all. And not just any son, one who's training at the best football academy in the world. Naruto's face turned bright red as several nearby guests perked up at the mention of Real Academy. Mom, can you not? But Kushina was just getting started. Real Academy, she repeated proudly, her voice carrying through the room. That's right. My Naruto is training alongside the best players in the world. It's no small feat, you know. Only the most talented get in. As Naruto ran a hand through his hair, glancing at Mikasa. She looked intrigued but didn't say anything. Instead, she simply gestured toward his tracksuit. I guess that explains the outfit. Yeah, Naruto muttered, scratching the back of his head. Turning his attention back to his mother, Mom, Naruto hissed, his embarrassment growing. Can we not do this here? Kushina ignored him entirely, turning to Ryo and Mikasa. Did you know about this? My son's a prodigy. He's going to be the best striker in the world one day. Ryo grinned, clearly enjoying the show. Oh, we've heard, Mrs. Uzumaki. He's been modest about it, though. Naruto shot him a glare. You're not helping, Ryo. Kushina turned back to Naruto, her hands on her peach. What? Am I not allowed to brag about my own son? There's bragging, and then there's this, Naruto muttered, running a hand through his hair. You're embarrassing me in front of everyone. Embarrassing you? Kushina said, feigning shock. Naruto, do you know how much I've sacrificed for you? I deserve to embarrass you at least a little. Naruto groaned, his face still red. Mom, I'm begging you, stop. Kushina leaned closer, smirking. Oh, you're begging now? That's new. Should I tell everyone about how you used to practice headers with a watermelon when you were 7? Naruto's eyes widened in horror. Don't you dare. Ryo burst out laughing, clutching his stomach. Even Mikasa, who had remained stoic for most of the evening, seemed to falter. Her lips curved upward slightly, the corners of her mouth lifting into the faintest smile. Naruto froze mid-argument, his blue eyes locking onto Mikasa. Wait, you're smiling, he said, pointing at her. Mikasa quickly tried to suppress it, but the damage was done. The faintest hint of amusement lingered in her eyes as she sipped her drink. I win the bet. Naruto exclaimed, his embarrassment momentarily forgotten. I told you I could make you smile. Mikasa shook her head, her expression returning to its usual calm. I didn't realize we were still keeping score. Oh, we're definitely keeping score, Naruto said, his grin wide. And that's 1 point for me. Kushina, oblivious to the bet but delighted by the interaction, clapped her hands together. Look at you, Naruto. Making friends already. See? I told you you're amazing. Naruto sighed, but he couldn't hide his grin. Yeah. Thanks, Mom. The Mikage estate began to quiet as the party wound down, guests bidding their farewells and drifting out into the crisp evening air. Naruto stood near the front entrance, his hands in his pockets as he chatted with Ryo, who had stuck by his side for most of the night. Despite the usual banter and teasing, Naruto found himself enjoying Ryo's company more than he had expected. Ryo stretched his arms behind his head, letting out a dramatic sigh. Man, these parties always drag on forever. You ready to head out? More than ready, Naruto replied, glancing at the cars lining up outside. But before we go, I wanted to say something. Ryo tilted his head, curious. What's up? Naruto turned to face him, his blue eyes steady. If you ever decide to give football a try, you should go for it. Watch a few videos, kick a ball around. See what you think. Ryo chuckled. Football, huh? Maybe. I'm still into basketball right now, but who knows? Maybe when I get bored of it, I'll give football a shot. Naruto smirked, his tone shifting as he stared directly into Ryo's eyes. Just know this: if you ever try to take my spot at Real Academy, you'll need more than just talent. you'll need the ego to challenge me. And you don't have that yet. Ryo blinked, caught off guard by the intensity in Naruto's voice. For a moment, it felt like he was standing in front of someone completely different, someone more commanding, more powerful. But before the weight of Naruto's words could fully sink in, the grin returned to his face. Not yet, huh? Ryo said, his voice quieter. Naruto's expression softened, and he clapped a hand on Ryo's shoulder. But if you do decide to go for it, I'll help you. Show you the ropes, give you a few tips. It'd be fun. Ryo smiled, the tension easing. Alright, Naruto, deal. The two exchanged contact information, and as they shook hands, Ryo felt a flicker of something he hadn't expected: respect. Naruto wasn't just another player. There was something about him that made Ryo want to take the challenge seriously. As the last of the guests filtered out, Naruto spotted Mikasa heading toward the exit, her sleek black hair catching the light as she moved. She walked with the same calm, deliberate grace that had drawn his attention earlier, and Naruto felt a strange sense of urgency. Hey, Mikasa, he called, jogging after her. She paused and turned, her gray eyes meeting his. Yes? Naruto hesitated for a moment, scratching the back of his head. I was wondering, could I get your number? Mikasa raised an eyebrow, her expression calm but curious. Why? Well, Naruto said, his tone lighter, I'll be heading back to Spain soon, and I won't be in Japan for a while. I thought maybe we could talk more sometime. Mikasa considered this, her eyes narrowing slightly as she studied him. Naruto stood his ground, his smile warm but sincere. Finally, she gave a small nod, pulling out her phone. All right, she said simply. Naruto grinned as they exchanged numbers, the glow of victory lighting up his expression. Thanks, Mikasa. I'll text you sometime. Sure, she replied, her tone neutral. But there was a faint softness in her gaze as she turned and walked away, leaving Naruto standing in the cool night air. Naruto adjusted his bag as he stepped off the plane in Madrid, the chill of the early Spanish morning nipping at his skin. The sights and sounds of the airport were familiar now. After spending the holidays in Japan, reconnecting with his family and making unexpected connections with Ryo and Mikasa, he was back where it all began, Real Academy. But this time, things felt different. He wasn't just returning as the same player who left, he was coming back with a sharper determination. While home, Naruto had reflected deeply on his time at the academy. The matches he lost, the moments he was outplayed especially by players, lingered in his mind like an itch he couldn't scratch. He knew he lacked something fundamental. Speed, power, and skill were vital, but the game was bigger than that. He needed to find his edge, something unique to him that could turn the tide in his favor. The academy grounds were alive with activity, even at this early hour. The steady thuds of football striking the turf, the shouts of coaches, and the sharp squeak of boots on grass filled the air. Naruto made his way to the locker room, where a mix of familiar and new faces greeted him. Some players nodded in acknowledgement, while others barely looked up. At Real Academy, respect wasn't given, it was earned. After changing into his training kit, Naruto joined his assigned team for the day's scrimmage. The coach, a tall man with a clipboard permanently attached to his hand, barked instructions. Today's focus, positional play and tactical awareness. I want every player thinking 2 moves ahead. Understand? The team murmured their agreement, but Naruto's mind was already racing. Positional play meant he couldn't rely on brute effort. It was about reading the game, something he'd been working on quietly in his own way. The whistle blew, and the game began. Naruto's team faced a squad led by one of the academy's most aggressive strikers. From the first touch, it was clear their opponents were organized, pressing high and cutting off passing lanes with precision. Naruto, playing in a central role, struggled at first. Every pass he tried was intercepted, and his teammates began to grow visibly frustrated. But as the game went on, something strange happened. Naruto's eyes began to focus on the flow of the game. The positioning of players, the patterns of movement, it was as if a faint whisper in his mind pointed out where things were breaking down. When the opposing winger pushed too far forward, Naruto's eye flicked to the gap he left behind. When their center back stepped out to press, Naruto saw the space they exposed in the middle. Shift left. Naruto called to his teammates. They're leaving the wing open. A few players glanced at him, unsure, but when they followed his instructions, the team suddenly found themselves breaking into space. Naruto's teammate on the wing received the ball and whipped in a cross that led to their first goal. Naruto clenched his fist, his heart pounding. What was that? He thought. It wasn't like he saw everything perfectly, but in that moment, it was as if the answer had been right in front of him. As the scrimmage continued, Naruto found himself stepping into a more commanding role. He didn't have the raw skill to take on 3 defenders and score on his own like SAE, but he had a growing knack for directing the flow of play. When he told a teammate to overlap, it opened space. When he called for a quick switch, it broke the opponent's press. Slowly, his team started to dominate. On the sidelines, the coaches exchanged glances. Uzumaki's reading the game differently today, one of them murmured. He's not just playing, he's thinking. The head coach nodded, jotting something on his clipboard. Keep an eye on him. He might be developing a tactical edge. After the scrimmage, the players gathered around the coach for feedback. Naruto wiped sweat from his brow, his body exhausted but his mind still buzzing. He knew he had played differently today, but he wasn't sure how to explain it. Good work today, the coach began, his tone as sharp as ever. Most of you need to work on your positional awareness. Too much ball watching. But one of you showed signs of real tactical growth. The players glanced at each other, murmurs spreading through the group. Naruto felt his stomach tighten. Uzumaki, the coach said, looking directly at him. You saw things today that others didn't. Keep building on that, it could be your strength. Naruto blinked, surprised. A few of his teammates gave him begrudging nods of acknowledgement. It wasn't much, but it was a step forward. Later that evening, Naruto sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the wall. He replayed the scrimmage in his mind, trying to understand what had happened. Why had the game suddenly made sense to him? Why had his instincts felt sharper than ever? His eyes drifted to the small mirror across the room. He leaned forward, staring at his reflection. His bright blue eyes gazed back at him, but one seemed to glint slightly differently under the fluorescent light. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but it made him pause. It's like, he muttered to himself. Like my eyes are showing me something. He shook his head, dismissing the thought. Whatever it was, it didn't matter. What mattered was that he had found something, a way to impact the game, even if he couldn't do it alone. The next day, Naruto approached the coach before training. Coach, he said, his voice steady. Can I play centrally again today? I want to keep working on what we did yesterday. The coach raised an eyebrow but nodded. Fine, show me it wasn't a fluke. Naruto nodded, determination burning in his chest. He didn't have SAE's talent, or Kaya's ferocity, but he had something else, something that was starting to take shape. As the team gathered on the pitch, Naruto took his position in the center, his eyes scanning the field. He wasn't just playing anymore. He was thinking, reading, adapting. And for the first time, he felt like he truly belonged. Naruto adjusted his boots as he sat on the bench, the crisp morning air of the Spanish training grounds biting against his skin. The past few weeks at Real Academy had been a whirlwind. After showing flashes of tactical insight during scrimmages, the coaches had started experimenting with his position, shifting him further back on the pitch. Today, just before training began, the head coach pulled Naruto aside. You're playing central attacking midfielder again, the coach said, his tone flat but firm. Naruto frowned. But I'm a forward, I want to be the one scoring goals. You don't have the tools for that yet, the coach replied bluntly, his eyes scanning Naruto's face for signs of resistance. You've got a decent eye for space and movement. Use that to help the team. For now, this is where you'll grow the most. Naruto clenched his fists, biting back his frustration. He had dreamed of being the one at the tip of the spear, the player who delivered the winning blow. Being pulled into the midfield felt like a step back, like the coaches didn't believe he could lead the line. But deep down, he couldn't deny that something was changing in the way he saw the game. He didn't understand it fully yet, but in those moments when the ball was in play, it was as if his eyes could pick apart the patterns of the pitch. Perhaps this role would help him figure it out. The whistle blew, signaling the start of the scrimmage. Naruto took his position just behind the striker, his eyes scanning the field. The team he was up against was aggressive, pressing high and forcing turnovers to launch quick counterattacks. At first, Naruto struggled. The tempo of the game in midfield was faster than he was used to, and he found himself getting closed down before he could make the right pass. "Think faster, Uzumaki," one of his teammates shouted after another turnover. Naruto growled under his breath, frustrated with himself. But as the minutes passed, he began to adjust. Instead of rushing his decisions, he started focusing on the game around him, letting his instincts guide him. Naruto's breakthrough came during the second half of the scrimmage. As his team transitioned into attack, he received the ball in space, his back to goal. A defender rushed in to close him down, but instead of panicking, Naruto's eyes flicked to the flanks. The left winger had dropped deep to help defend, leaving a gap near the touchline. Without hesitating, Naruto turned and sent a perfectly weighted pass into that space. His teammate sprinted onto it, cutting inside, and delivering a cross that led to a goal. Naruto grinned, his heart pounding. It wasn't just luck, he had seen that space open up before it happened. As the game went on, Naruto began to lean into his instincts. He directed his teammates, calling for overlaps and quick switches. He started noticing patterns in the opposing team's defense, when their center back stepped out, when their fullback drifted too wide. It was like solving a puzzle in real time, and for the first time, he felt like he was in control. On the sideline, the coaches watched Naruto closely. "Look at him," one of them said, nodding toward the pitch. "He's seeing things others don't." "He's got a knack for reading the game," another coach added. "Not just playing it. It's not flashy, but it's effective." The head coach stroked his chin thoughtfully. "If he keeps this up, he could become the brain of the team. A player who controls the tempo and dictates play. Every great team needs someone like that." After training, Naruto lingered on the pitch, kicking a stray ball as the sun began to set. The scrimmage had gone well, but he couldn't shake the annoyance of being forced into a position he hadn't chosen. "I'm supposed to be scoring goals," he muttered to himself, dribbling the ball idly. "Not setting them up." "You're seeing the game better, though," a voice said behind him. Naruto turned to see Kaya Riku, one of his teammates, leaning against the goalpost. Kaya had a habit of speaking his mind, often to Naruto's irritation. "What do you mean?" Naruto asked. Kaya shrugged. "You're not scoring, sure. But you're making the team better. Those passes today? Half the guys out there wouldn't even think of them. You're reading the game in a way most people can't." Naruto sighed, rolling the ball under his foot. "I don't want to just make the team better. I want to be the one who wins the game." Kaya smirked. "Then maybe this is how you get there. You're learning how to see the whole field, not just the goal. Keep doing that, and you'll be unstoppable." Naruto stared at him for a moment, then nodded slowly. Maybe Kaya had a point. If he could master this role, if he could see the game better than anyone else, he might eventually find his way back to the front line. Later at night on the pitch, the floodlights of Real Academy cast a cold glow over the empty training ground. The other players had long since retired to their dorms, but Naruto remained, his lone figure moving tirelessly across the pitch. He was drenched in sweat, his Real Academy kit sticking to his skin as he retrieved a ball from the net and jogged back to the edge of the penalty box. For a while now, Naruto had focused on sharpening his tactical mind, embracing his role as a central attacking midfielder. But tonight, he wasn't working on passing or vision. Tonight, he was chasing his original dream, scoring goals. In the solitude of the training ground, Naruto stood still, the ball at his feet. He closed his eyes, replaying every missed opportunity in his mind. Those moments when he hesitated, when his shot lacked precision, when goalkeepers had read him easily. It wasn't just about power, anyone could strike the ball hard. He needed something else, something perfect. Curved finesse shots. The kind that bend away from the keeper and into the top corner. Naruto took a deep breath, his eyes snapping open as he lined up his shot. He took 2 steps forward, struck the ball with the inside of his foot, and watched as it soared toward the goal. It bent beautifully until it veered just wide of the post. "DMN it," Naruto muttered, running a hand through his sweat-soaked hair. Naruto jogged to retrieve the ball, muttering under his breath. He placed it back on the ground, positioning it carefully at the edge of the box. This time, he adjusted his angle, focusing on the mechanics of his strike, the position of his plant foot, the angle of his approach, the part of the ball he was aiming to hit. With a sharp inhale, he struck the ball again. It bent more cleanly this time, curling toward the far corner, but it still sailed just over the crossbar. Frustration bubbled up, but Naruto tamped it down. For every miss, 100 more shots. That was his promise to himself. He wouldn't leave this pitch until he mastered the shot. And so, he began again. For every miscalculation, for every shot that didn't meet his standards, Naruto planted the ball again and again. His feet ached, his muscles screamed, but he refused to stop. "I'll master this shot," Naruto muttered to himself. "No matter how long it takes." As he placed the ball down again, the sound of approaching footsteps broke his focus. He turned to see Sae, standing at the edge of the pitch. The faint glow of the floodlights illuminated Sae's calm, detached expression. "Practicing late again, Naruto?" Sae asked, his voice carrying a hint of amusement. Naruto narrowed his eyes. "What do you want, Sae?" Sae walked closer, his hands in his pockets. "I was passing by and saw you out here. Figured I'd see what you're working on." "Not like you'd care," Naruto muttered, positioning himself for another shot. He struck the ball cleanly, sending it curling into the top corner of the net. Sae watched the shot, his expression unreadable. "That's not bad." Naruto turned to face him, his jaw tightening. "What do you mean, not bad?" "That's going to win us matches one day." Sae's lips curled into a faint smirk. "You might get the chance sooner than you think." Naruto frowned, his curiosity piqued despite himself. "What are you talking about?" Sae's smirk grew slightly as he stopped a few feet away. The lineup for the next U20 match was announced. "We're playing against a Jajax next week." Naruto's eyes widened in surprise. "Wait, how do you know?" "Because I'm the striker," Sae said matter-of-factly, his tone dripping with confidence. "Of course they told me first." Naruto's heart skipped a beat. The idea of being part of a match at that level was both thrilling and daunting. But before he could respond, Sae tilted his head, his sharp eyes locking onto Naruto's. "Looks like you'll be on the roster too," Sae continued. "As a midfielder." Naruto froze. "What?" Sae's smirk didn't waver. "I've been watching you. You've started playing deeper, focusing on reading the game and setting up others. It suits you better than trying to score all the time." Naruto clenched his fists, his frustration bubbling to the surface. "That's not true. I'm a striker, I've always been a striker." Sae chuckled, a low, condescending sound that made Naruto's body boil. "You can tell yourself that if it makes you feel better. But the way you're playing now? You're better off as a midfielder. Just make sure I get the best passes, alright?" Naruto stepped forward, his blue eyes blazing with defiance. "Shut up, Sae. You think you're so untouchable, don't you? You think this is your team?" Sae's smirk faded slightly, his calm expression hardening. "It is my team. And as long as I'm on the pitch, I'm the one who decides the outcome." Naruto's chest heaved as he stared at Sae, the weight of his words settling over him. But instead of backing down, he straightened his posture, his voice steady. "Then watch me. Watch what I do on the pitch. I don't care if I'm in midfield or up front, I'll be the one to win this game. Sae studied him for a moment, his sharp eyes narrowing slightly. Bold words, Naruto. But words don't win matches. We'll see if you can back them up. Naruto didn't respond. He grabbed the ball and jogged toward the sideline, his movements deliberate. As he reached the edge of the pitch, he glanced back at Sae one last time. You'd better be ready, Sae, Naruto said. Because I'm not just here to pass to you. I'm here to prove I'm better than you. Sae didn't reply, but his gaze lingered on Naruto as he walked away. For the first time, there was a flicker of something in his eyes, not irritation or arrogance, but curiosity. Later, as Naruto collapsed onto his dorm bed, his body aching from the night's training, his mind raced with thoughts of the upcoming match. The idea of playing alongside Sae in a U20 game was both exhilarating and terrifying, but he couldn't let fear hold him back. The dorm room was dark, the glow of Naruto's phone screen the only source of light as he lay sprawled on his bed. The upcoming match against Ajax U20 loomed over him like a storm cloud, the thought of stepping onto the pitch with players of that caliber sending a mix of adrenaline and anxiety through his veins. But Naruto had long since learned to channel those feelings into motivation. He would train harder, think smarter, and show the coaches and Sae that he could hold his own. The clock on his phone read 10:03 p.m. Most of the academy was already asleep, preparing for the rigorous training schedule of the following day. But Naruto's mind was too restless. His fingers hovered over his phone screen, scrolling through his contacts until they landed on a name. Mikasa Ackerman. It had been a few weeks since they exchanged numbers at the Mikage party, and Naruto hadn't messaged her since. Partly because of his busy schedule, but mostly because he wasn't sure what to say. Tonight, though, he felt like reaching out. With a deep breath, Naruto typed out a message. Naruto, hey, are you awake? He stared at the screen, his thumb hovering over the send button. For a moment, he considered deleting it, but before he could overthink, he hit send. The message went through, and Naruto immediately felt the nervous anticipation of waiting for a reply. The response came quicker than he expected. Mikasa, yeah, just woke up. Weird time to send your first message. Naruto chuckled to himself, imagining her deadpan expression as she typed. He quickly replied. Naruto, sorry, I've been busy. I know Japan is 8 hours ahead. Didn't mean to wake you up. It's like 10 p.m. here. Mikasa, 6 a.m. here. I was getting up for school anyway. Naruto laughed softly to himself, picturing Mikasa's no-nonsense attitude. She wasn't one to mince words, and that made her responses feel even more real. Naruto, how've you been? How's school? Mikasa, same old. Nothing new. Naruto frowned slightly, sensing that she might be bored with the conversation. The last thing he wanted was for their first real exchange to fall flat. Taking a deep breath, he typed another message, his thumb hesitating over the keyboard before hitting send. Naruto, is texting boring? Can I call for 20 minutes? Please? He watched the screen, waiting nervously for her reply. His heart skipped a beat when the 3 little dots appeared, indicating she was typing. Mikasa, sure. I have to get ready for school soon anyway. Naruto grinned, immediately hitting the call button. The phone rang only twice before Mikasa's voice came through, calm and steady. Hello? Hey, Naruto said, his tone lighter now that the call had connected. Thanks for letting me call. I figured texting wasn't doing the trick. Mikasa let out a soft laugh, barely audible but enough to make Naruto smile. It's fine. You're not wrong, though I'm not much of a texter. I kind of got that vibe, Naruto said, chuckling. So how's school? Mikasa's voice remained steady, though there was a hint of amusement. You already asked that. Naruto scratched the back of his head. Right. Sorry. What's new with you? Same as always, Mikasa replied. Classes, homework, and watching Ryo try to outdo himself in every PE lesson. Naruto laughed. Sounds about right for him. What about you? Mikasa asked. I'm guessing your schedule isn't much easier. Naruto let out a dramatic sigh. You have no idea. Training here is brutal. The coaches don't let up, and the competition is insane. Sometimes I feel like I'm barely keeping up. You're still there, Mikasa pointed out. That says something. Naruto paused, surprised by the quiet confidence in her words. Yeah, I guess it does. The conversation lulled for a moment, and Naruto leaned back against his pillow, staring up at the ceiling. Hey, Mikasa? Yeah? I'm playing in a big match soon, Naruto said, his voice softening. Against a Jajax U20. It's a huge deal, and I'll be on the same pitch as SAE. It's a lot. Mikasa's tone didn't change, but there was a certain steadiness in her reply. You've worked hard for this. Just focus on what you do best. Naruto smiled, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. Thanks. That actually helps. You'll be fine, Mikasa said simply. You don't seem like the type to back down from a challenge. Not a chance, Naruto said, grinning. Speaking of challenges, how's that smile of yours? Have you been practicing since the party? Mikasa let out a small huff of laughter. No. Naruto laughed. Come on, you're killing me here. I'm trying to keep my streak alive. Mikasa didn't reply immediately, but Naruto thought he heard the faintest hint of a smile in her tone. You're ridiculous, Naruto. I get that a lot, Naruto said, his grin widening. As the conversation wound down, Mikasa sighed softly. I should go. I need to get ready for school. Right, Naruto said, sitting up. Thanks for letting me call. It was nice to talk to someone who's not obsessed with football for once. Mikasa chuckled. Good luck with your match. Thanks, Naruto said, his voice warm. I'll let you know how it goes. Alright, Mikasa said. Talk later, Naruto. Talk later, Naruto echoed, his grin lingering long after the call ended. Naruto set his phone down, staring at the ceiling with a newfound sense of calm. Talking to Mikasa had cleared his mind in a way he hadn't expected. She didn't sugarcoat things or try to offer empty reassurances. She just listened. And that made all the difference. The thought of the match against a Jajax still loomed large, but now, Naruto felt ready. He would train harder, think sharper, and prove that he deserved to be on that pitch. And maybe, just maybe, he'd have something worth telling Mikasa about the next time they talked. The air in the locker room was heavy with tension and quiet anticipation. The muffled roar of the crowd outside the tunnel echoed faintly through the walls, a reminder of the magnitude of the match awaiting them. Naruto sat on the bench, his mind steady as he reached for his kit. It was all white with black outlines. This wasn't just another scrimmage, this was a U20 match against a Jajax, one of the most renowned youth teams in Europe. Naruto picked up his jersey, turning it over in his hands. The number 7 was stitched boldly on the back, the white fabric almost gleaming under the fluorescent lights. 7 was a strong number, one often associated with legendary wingers and attackers. But for Naruto, it wasn't quite right. His gaze flicked across the locker room, landing on SAE, who was leaning casually against the wall. SAE's kit bore the number 10, the number Naruto had always dreamed of wearing, the number of the ace, the leader, the difference maker. SAE thinks he's untouchable, Naruto thought. He thinks I'm just here to pass the ball to him. Today, I'll show him he's wrong. With renewed determination, Naruto pulled the jersey over his head, the material fitting snugly as he adjusted it. He stared down at the number on his chest. 7. A good number. But not yet the one he wanted. I'll earn it, Naruto muttered to himself. One game at a time. The head coach entered the locker room, clipboard in hand and a stern look on his face. The chatter among the players died instantly as everyone turned their attention to him. All right, listen up, the coach began, his voice steady but commanding. "This is a huge opportunity for all of you. Ajax is one of the toughest teams in Europe. Their players are fast, disciplined, and relentless. If you're not sharp, they'll tear you apart." He walked to the tactics board, tapping a marker against it as he continued. "Naruto, you'll be playing as the central attacking midfielder. Your job is to link the play, exploit their weaknesses, and feed SAE. He's our main striker, keep him supplied, and we'll break them down." Naruto nodded, though his jaw tightened slightly at the mention of feeding SAE. He knew his role, but he also knew he couldn't let himself fade into the background. He had to leave his mark. The coach's eyes scanned the room. "This is your chance to prove you belong here. Give me everything you've got. Now get out there and show them what Real Academy is made of." As the team filed out of the locker room, the atmosphere grew electric. The sound of the crowd swelled as they approached the tunnel, a mixture of cheers and chants filling the air. Naruto walked in the middle of the group, his head held high. His heart was pounding, but he didn't let it show. Beside him, SAE walked with his usual calm, almost detached demeanor. The two hadn't spoken since their brief exchange at the training pitch a few days ago, but Naruto could feel SAE's presence like a weight on his shoulders. "You ready for this, Naruto?" SAE asked suddenly, his tone casual. Naruto glanced at him, his blue eyes sharp. "More than ready." SAE smirked faintly. "Good. Don't screw it up." Naruto didn't reply, but his grip on his fists tightened. "I won't just keep up, SAE. I'll outshine you." The players emerged from the tunnel to a deafening roar. The stadium lights blazed down on the perfectly manicured pitch, and the sheer scale of the crowd made Naruto's chest tighten. But as he stepped onto the grass, a strange calm washed over him. This was where he belonged on the pitch, in the heart of the game. The team lined up for the anthem, and Naruto scanned the opposing lineup. Ajax's players were tall, athletic, and brimming with confidence. They moved with precision even during the pre-match rituals. But Naruto didn't waver. He adjusted his kit one last time, his gaze fixed on the ball in the center circle. The whistle echoed across the stadium, signaling the start of the match. Naruto stood in the center circle, his heart pounding in his chest. The deafening roar of the crowd surrounded him, a constant reminder of the stakes. But as he closed his eyes, the noise faded, replaced by a focused silence. This wasn't just a game. This was his chance to show the world what he could do to prove that he belonged on the same stage as SAE. He took a deep breath, letting the familiar fire ignite in his chest. When his eyes snapped open, they burned with determination. It wasn't just Naruto standing there anymore. This was the side of him that came alive in real matches, a version of himself driven by ego, ambition, and the unshakable belief that he could dominate the game. "It's time to show them what I can do." Ajax started with the ball, immediately pressing forward with their signature high-tempo play. Their passes were sharp, their movements precise, and within seconds, they were bearing down on Real defense. Naruto dropped back into the midfield, reading the play. His eyes scanned the field, and he saw a brief hesitation from the Ajax midfielder. Naruto darted forward, intercepting the ball cleanly before spinning away from his opponent. "Move," he shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos as he surged upfield. The crowd roared as Naruto advanced, weaving through two defenders before spotting SAE making a diagonal run behind the back line. The path was clear. For a moment, Naruto hesitated, the urge to take the shot himself burning in his chest. But the better option was obvious. Naruto slipped the ball through the defense with pinpoint precision, splitting the center backs. SAE latched onto it effortlessly, taking one touch before blasting the ball into the top corner. The stadium erupted as SAE jogged back, his expression calm but confident. Naruto met him near the center circle, his breathing heavy. "Good pass," SAE said simply. "Just finish what I give you," Naruto replied, his eyes glinting with determination. Ajax wasn't going to let Real Academy dominate easily. They adjusted their press, targeting Naruto every time he received the ball. For several tense minutes, the midfield became a battlefield, with Naruto forced to fend off relentless challenges. Despite the pressure, Naruto began to shine. He used quick touches and sharp turns to escape markers, creating space where there was none. His vision was razor-sharp, and every pass carried purpose. The crowd began to murmur as Naruto threaded another ball through the defense, this time from a deeper position. Once again, SAE was there, timing his run perfectly to beat the offside trap. He took the pass in stride and buried the shot with clinical precision. "Another one," the commentator shouted. Ito sure SAE with the finish, but that pass from Uzumaki Naruto incredible vision. As SAE celebrated, the cameras lingered on Naruto, whose steely expression betrayed no satisfaction. The commentators picked up on the moment. "Isn't Uzumaki from Japan, too?" one of them said. "What's happening with Japanese football? First SAE, and now this? It's incredible," another replied. "Two players from the same country, dominating at this level. They're becoming an unstoppable duo." Ajax fought back hard, their players testing real defense with dangerous crosses and slick combinations. But every time they gained momentum, Naruto disrupted it. He intercepted passes, broke up plays, and orchestrated counterattacks with a calm that belied his age. As the first half wore on, Naruto found himself at a crossroads. His instincts screamed at him to take the game into his own hands, to drive forward and find the back of the net himself. But every time he saw an opening, another path revealed itself, a pass that would create an even better chance for SAE. Naruto's jaw tightened as he released yet another perfectly weighted through ball, watching SAE sprint onto it and score with ease. The crowd erupted, the commentators losing their minds. Unbelievable. SAE with a first-half hat trick, and every goal has been set up by Naruto Uzumaki. What an incredible partnership. Naruto jogged back to his position, the cheers ringing in his ears. Despite the praise, a small part of him burned with frustration. He wanted the glory. He wanted to score. But the logical part of him knew this was the right way to win. As the halftime whistle blew, the players walked off the pitch to thunderous applause. Naruto wiped the sweat from his brow, his legs heavy but his mind sharper than ever. The coach met him near the tunnel, clapping him on the shoulder. "That's the best I've seen from you, Uzumaki. Keep this up, and you'll be unstoppable." Naruto nodded, but his eyes drifted to SAE, who was surrounded by teammates and reporters near the touchline. Despite his own stellar performance, it was SAE who was stealing the spotlight. As the team headed into the locker room, Naruto sat down on the bench, taking off his shirt, staring at the number 7. He clenched his fists, a mix of pride and determination swirling within him. This is just the first half, Naruto thought. I'm not done yet. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 2. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author SpellRGN on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.